Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather, bringing you the latest long-range update. All's quiet here on the home front right now. Really not a lot going on. There's a little bit of some action going on up here in New England, and there's a little bit of light precipitation there going up on there, in the northern part of Wisconsin. But around here, really nothing going on. Our next system is up here in Canada. That's going to dive down, and really, like I said, here for us, just not a whole lot going on. Temperatures here 6:30 p.m. Central Time on the 12th of December at night, in the 20s around the area, so it's cold, but pretty quiet overall other than that. Now, that will change. We're going to warm up a little bit tomorrow, but there's also another system rolling through tomorrow, so let me show you that. Here's future radar, and as we go into the day on Wednesday, there's some snow that moves up to our north tomorrow morning. And then that system, that little wave moves out, some more snow moves in later on in the afternoon, and you see there's maybe just a little tiny band that wants to sneak in down here. Most likely it would be rain if it sneaks in for us, because our temperatures are going to be a little bit too warm for snow. But, by and large, it's going to be another one of these moisture-starved kind of systems where it's probably not going to affect us, and it's in and out here pretty quickly, as you see as well. So it'll knock us down in temperatures for just a little bit, but not for a whole lot. If I just show you the 10-day here, we go up to the upper 40s tomorrow after starting out in the 20s, but then look at that. We get knocked down a couple of knocks here for Thursday and Friday, but then it's a nice warming trend after that. In fact, look, next week we can even see the 50s. The euro is saying pretty much the same thing. The euro is usually almost always a tiny bit warmer here, and then if we look at the 15-day from the euro ensembles, we're going to stay warm for a little while. Well, warm is, I suppose, a relative term, isn't it? You're talking temperatures here into the upper 40s and low 50s here for at least a while, and then by the time you get close to Christmas, which is right here, well, that's when those temperatures start to decline and you start to cool down just a little bit more. So we'll see how long this warmer stretch lasts. Remember my last long-range video, it lasted for like 7 days, and I said that's a little too long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're down to 6 now on this warmer stretch, if you will, and before the next things come in. So we'll see. It may knock it down another day or two here. No doubt the milder weather is coming, and that'll be a welcome change for some of you, I'm sure. It's not going to stick around, though. As you look out towards the 25th, well, it's going to get stormy again. And let's just take a look at the data, and that's the brunt of what I want to dive into here tonight. It's just to give you an idea of what the data is showing. So this is the pattern as we look towards Christmas. And, just to essentially give you an idea of what's going on, we've been in this very amplified pattern where we've had a trough deeply amplified out to the ridge, rather. That's created a deep trough over us, and over the period of next week, that's going to moderate a little bit into more of a zonal flow. And so instead of Arctic air coming back down into here, it's going to be more Pacific air coming in off of the coast. That'll moderate those temperatures and give us a little milder weather here. But that'll change back, and this is right before Christmas time. This is Saturday the 23rd of December, and you got a pretty interesting pattern shaping up, especially for those of us here in the Ohio Valley. So, just take a look at, you've got a very deep trough out here with this Aleutian low, and, you've got a deep, highly amplified ridge up here, and you've got a trough down here as well. But, notice also what's going on here is it's trying to build the southeast ridge up here for you a little bit more, and so maybe I ought to just illustrate it. There's your southeast ridge, and there's your ridge of high pressure out here. And then you got the Aleutian low over here, and you've got this deep low pressure going down here as well. And so you've got a ridge of high pressure developed out here as well. And so that's sort of forcing the jet stream to sort of buckle in a way sort of like this, if that ends up making sense out of it. And so, but just notice with me the shape of this trough. Because you've got this southeast ridge starting to flare up out here a little bit, what you've got is a trough that's kind of more central U.S. based than it is anything. You've still got a pretty highly amplified ridge, and that's allowed a pretty deep trough, but the angle of this trough here is really key, because I want you to notice what's going on. I think it might help if I go ahead and take off those lines so that you can just see the colors a little bit more. Notice you've got a very clear line of baroclinic zone here. here setting up. Baroclinic zone essentially is a thermal gradient. So this is where the hot and the cold ends up meeting, and that's what you see sort of in the white areas here. It'll get real clear here if I just put on the temperature anomalies. But we can see that baroclinic zone set up really nicely here. So you've got the core of your cold all bottled up into here. That's not a bad thing, because I'll talk about that why here in just a minute. But what you've got here is this jet stream pattern sort of going down something similar to this. All right. Ignore this up in here, but this is pretty much what you've got going on over in here. So you've got this highly amplified ridge, this deeply amplified trough, and it's sort of going up in a fashion kind of similar to this. You've got warm air down here, and you've got cold air up here. Excuse me, folks, fighting a cold. And now, where exactly do these meet? Well, right here through the Ohio Valley, right? You see this sort of area right over in here. This is what we call baroclinic zone. That is where your very cold temperatures start to clash with your very warm temperatures. And right through that is sort of a weakness that will allow storms to sort of ride up through. And so what you can end up having then as a result of this is, as the jet stream takes this dip and rounds the trough like this, what you can have happen is these storms start to form out here around the panhandle of Oklahoma, and then they can ride this baroclinic zone sort of right up like this, and you get a storm track that's sort of something similar to this. And so that may mean that you could get a winter storm with a snow track sort of like this, or the storm track could be sort of anywhere in this round. The reality is, this far out you don't know, but I would say, just as a rough guess, for a winter storm track, anywhere you see in that yellow line, I believe this could go from that developing storm that's down there. So that's the kind of idea and the rationale behind this. And so we want to look in the data and see, can we find anything there? Well, let's go to the GFS then, because it's the only operational model that sees out this far. And what you see is, as we get closer to the 21st, again, we've got this developing low pressure system out in here. And remember, if you followed me, and we've talked about some of the East Asia rule, the East Asia rule does suggest that around the 22nd to 24th, right around that time frame, we should have some sort of a storm system rolling through this part. So the data does fit with that rule as well. Now watch what happens here is, you've got this low pressure that forms on the panhandle, and as I put this into motion, where does that low pressure go? It starts to form. There it is, starting to move up in here, and it moves sort of in a path right like this, sort of a panhandle hooker. It develops out in here in the panhandle, it cuts very quickly right through Indiana, and sort of goes up into New England. And so if I were to put a track on it, basically the track on this puppy went something similar to that. And so that's kind of a similar idea to what I just showed you on the European ensembles. The idea that right in that baroclinic zone you could have a storm track that will ride. Now, with this particular storm track today, this particular round, that would give rain here for southern Indiana, and you might go to some snow on the backside. But then it's followed by, look at this, another developing low pressure right behind it as well, and as it goes up, it starts to be a pretty deep low, and what you see on it is it starts to wrap around this cold core behind it. And so remember, you've got all of this cold core locked up here in Canada. You've got this deep low pressure, and so what it is really doing, it is just sort of wrapping down that cold in it. And so you get what we call storm-induced cold. It's not long-term sustaining cold, but it's cold enough to be able to turn it to a wet precipitation type up here. And you got even some icing concerns here with this as well. Now, is that right? Again, we're a long ways off from that, so it's just an idea at this point. That one goes off, and then you get some heavy snow on the backside behind this, only for another system to sort of roll through here. Whoops, let me get back to where I was here, folks. So you get an idea with that. Now, we want to be careful, because you see a wintry setup like this, but if I were to go back here and show you one run prior to this, and let me just show you this to be fair. There's that low developing in the panhandle out here, and watch what happens. And so this would be a Christmas Eve storm, and it's rain. And it is a pretty healthy dose of snow up to our north. And then followed it, there's that second system, and it's all rain for us. And it's snow with that up to our north. So Which one is it going to be? Well, folks, the reality is this far out, we have absolutely no clue. It really could be either one at this point. And, you know, this far out, the modeling also tends to sort of amplify these up into bigger storms that, when they get closer, doesn't necessarily look as big then either. So you've got to take that idea into consideration. But with a pattern like this, you know, you've got this. You've got this. You've got this in a favorable position if this turns true, where this trough rounds, you can get lows developing. They track right along that baroclinic zone, and that could put the Ohio Valley right at the risk for something here in Christmas time. Now, it's not set in stone, as I said. It's something that we're just going to have to watch, but the potential is certainly there. Ensemble data sees it as well. If we look at total snow accumulation here, this is the GFS ensembles, and this is, as you see, basically just 20 different members, 20 different slightly perturbed runs, if you will, of the run, and you can come out with a mean. The control is essentially the GFS, and you see there are some of these that have some pretty decent snowstorms. Look at member 17. That's a pretty hefty snowstorm for the Ohio Valley. 19 is a pretty hefty snowstorm as well. So is 14, and so is 9 there. And so you've got some that be able to give that. The Euro ensembles, they have more members than what we do with the American data here. But again, you get that same idea. All snowing some sort of snow. Some of them have, you know, fairly robust amounts of snow forest, like member 11 here. Or if I go out, it has 50 different members. And if you go out here, you can see some of these have some, you know, member 32 here. I'll take member 32 for $500, please, Alex. That would be a nice one if you like heavy amounts of snow. So you can pause the video and look at those members a little bit more if you really want. But the bottom line here is, folks, there's plenty of data showing here for a setup similar to this. We could end up having it. I think there will be plenty of data that will show us a similar setup to this, though, too, in coming days. It's going to go back and forth, but right now it looks like we are in the sweet spot for that to track. It's going to depend on where that low tracks. And, you know, if that low, if the baroclinic zone sets up a little bit to our south, if this southeast ridge over here doesn't amplify to the extent that it says, that could allow the low to sneak more like this and would put us in the snow zone. On the other hand, if that southeast ridge flares up a little bit more here, you know, we may be able to get a storm track that's more forced like this, would put us firmly in the rain sector. So we'll just have to see. In a La Nina year, these southeast ridges usually are a thing, but in a negative QBO year, sometimes that can help suppress the southeast ridge. Could be that the model is overplaying that a little bit. We'll just end up having to see there. It'll be a good test for it coming up over the next couple of weeks to see you know, whether the southeast ridge is going to behave like a normal La Nina or not. I'm just not feeling it at this point. I think it's going to be there, but I think it may be more suppressed than it ends up showing. We'll just end up having to see on that. As we look then further a little bit on into January, though, let me just give you a little bit of a hint, because some of you have been asking, well, what about beyond here? What about into January? Does the cold last? Here's the week 1 temperature anomalies from the Euro weeklies that ran last night, and you can see there we are cold this first week, but we warm up again and we moderate, as I said, into the 40s and 50s, go slightly above normal here. But then right behind that for Christmas week, that cold starts to return there again, and that cold then ends up lasting at least into the first part of January as well. Does it stay beyond that? Well, we'll see. But just to give you an idea that the data is in reasonable agreement even with the CFS as well. Here's week 1 on the CFS, not bad. And then you see there we warm up a little bit next week with it, and then right back to Christmas time, that cold ends up coming back. And by the time you get into early January, we're still kind of cool up here. We're starting to get some warmth here. You're starting to see maybe that southeast ridge flare up here and give you some of that warmth. And guess what? Again, if this were true, by the way, if you got that southeast ridge starting to flare up, then you got a thermal gradient sort of right in here, right? And you've got the cold here. So what is that? That's a central U.S. trough sort of up in here like this. Guess what? That could give you a storm pattern again where you get these panhandle hookers that go like this. So we could end up being multiple systems with a similar track to that, maybe even more than just this one. So the idea is sticks around for a while. And if you go even further out into this, you notice that as you go later on into January, the same or very similar setup kinds to evolve all the way through the end of January. So chances are pretty good that we stay below normal for a while overall. We'll have some moderation periods. I don't think we're looking at major ridiculous cold all the time, but I think it's certainly going to be a much colder period for us around here than what we saw last year. So if this taste of winter has hit you and you're like, oh my gosh, this is way different than last year, you're right. And it looks like this kind of chillier weather is going to stick around for a while. Again, we'll moderate. We'll have some days in the 40s and 50s, but get used to those 20s and 30s because I think we're going to see a fair amount of them this year. The question I know that you want to know, are we going to see snow with this? I think we will at some point in time. The pattern like this will eventually produce. I'm not seeing this being an overabundance of storm years for us. You know as well as I do that here around the Evansville area where I forecast for southern Indiana, we get more rain than we do snow, especially in any winter like this. All right, and if you get a storm track that's out in here with a panhandle hooker, more times than not, it's not going to go this direction to give us snow. More times than not, it sort of goes right over us and ends up with rain. Climatology is on the side of rain with this. This could be one of those years, just very honestly, where you have a really good snow winter set up here for places like this. I really see that. Places around I-70 up in Indy and northward, this could be a really good year for snow for you. South of there, I'm starting to question it. Hope I'm wrong, because I'm a snow lover. It's the way I'm seeing right now, folks.